Hello and welcome to On Air with Owen. Me, Owen Richards, founder and CEO of Air Marketing, your go-to for outsourced B2B sales and marketing, and my new co-host, fellow business owner and great friend, Neil Finnie.
Hey everyone, Neil Finnie here, founder of the Generator Work Hub, a co-working space here in the beautiful Exeter, and also Next Gen Careers, a professional development program nurturing the talents of tomorrow.
Each week, we'll be diving into the everyday truths around running your own business. And trust me, we're not sugarcoating anything. It's all about the highs, the lows, and everything between when you run your own business as a founder.
Expect candid conversations and valuable insights between the two of us. Plus, we'll be joined by some special guests along the way.
So, time to sit back and tune in to this week's honest conversation. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of On Air. Neil, good to have you back on. I've got my regular co-host Neil Finnie with us again today. How are you, mate? Had a good week?
I'm all right.
Yeah?
I'm a bit hoarse.
Yeah.
I was away in Barcelona last week, and I never get sick, and I got sick. So I'm recovering, and no one likes to hear people moan, but I love to moan. So yeah, I feel all right now. I think I'm at the tail end of it.
You're one of the more positive people I know, mate. So I know you don't moan too much. You don't need to play into that one. I'm a bit hoarse too, for what it's worth. So it sounds like this is going to be a bit gruff in terms of voice and the way it goes. But we'll get through the conversation. You got plenty of Lemsip and ibuprofen and whatever else going over the last week. Have you? Bit of man flu?
Mainly beer.
It
was Cerveza. I was in Barcelona. Cerveza. So a few beers to get me through, keep me sleeping. But I feel all right now. I was drowning my sorrows a little bit last night after
oh yeah, there's no
the realization of no Champions League. But hey ho, this is a football podcast.
It only took 1 minute for you to mention Spurs. Never mind. You're a bit slow off the mark today. So what were you up to in Barcelona? Tell us about that.
Yeah, we had a program with about 30 master students learning around innovation, kind of design technologies in the workplace, working with it's actually quite an interesting project. So they come over to Barcelona and it's for them to use their theoretical knowledge in a practical environment. And the innovation challenge in Barcelona was how to establish understanding of cricket, to use cricket as this kind of vehicle of social integration, but also to promote, this new European league that they're trying to set up, a new T20 league. But you've got Americans trying to figure out cricket in a city of Barcelona, in the country of Barcelona, that have no idea about cricket. But it was quite interesting because there's a big Pakistani Indian community in Barcelona that obviously play and love cricket. So it's how can you use that to build bridges? So it's really interesting, but trying to explain the nuances, especially of Test match cricket. It was the Americans are like, what? All those games and you finish with a draw? It's like, yeah. Just don't get it.
No. Let me ask you a couple of questions on the business side. So it sounds fascinating, by the way, and what a challenge. How does that come about? Like, what are the mechanisms that end up with you with a group of students in Barcelona learning about the innovation around cricket? Like, how does that come to be?
Yeah, God, years and years of developing programs within educational settings of work experience, but more specifically around the skills needed for that transition into the world of work. So we work with, multiple institutes across Europe and North America in plugging in real world environment kind of challenges around business, challenges around business skills, professional skills. And we do that in sorry, my dog's kind of making a hell of a noise below me. I do apologize. That's my train of thought. So basically about we're that bridge between education and the real professional world. We work with universities in the US that also want that international component, because working in business in North America is very different to working in business in Spain or in the UK. So it's also around those kind of cultural differences. And I say we've been doing it for a long time now, you know, over 15 years really. So, you know, it's about starting small with a couple of colleges locally, and then utilizing that experience and then going wider and wider and building those connections and building those networks. But working in this field it's interesting because it is all around the networks that you build, the people that trust you, the people that know what you do. And it can be really difficult because it's quite an established market as well. So you've got people that have been doing it for 25, 30, 40, 50 years. So yeah, but it's good fun. I still like working with the students, and it's nice to be able to add some different value into the educational
So
setting.
Is that funded by the institutions?
Yeah, well, it works differently. So that one specifically was underneath their tuition fee. There's that experience to come to Barcelona. We also plug in remotely throughout the year for them. We work in a lot of EU funding during Erasmus Plus, and then we have private fee payers that want to pay for upskilling their knowledge in certain areas. So we also get a lot of that as well, especially in the US market, where they're probably more, I guess, it's more common to pay for development. They've been paying for their education for far longer. So they pay for other experiences in terms of that kind of next growth in their professional life.
Yeah, interesting. The reason I asked that question is just thinking about like sales and and how selling changes from business to business, right? I think we all kind of have our narrow view of what sales is and how do we sell. But in your instance, you're selling to individuals who want to invest in themselves. You're selling to institutions because I guess they've got to build that into their fee in the first place. So you're selling into somebody who's not your end user buyer. You're selling into a facilitator, an introducer. It's a partnership sale, I guess, more so.
Yeah, 100%. I think we tried going the route. I've been working with Americans.
Oh, here he is, the route.
The route. So yeah, that route to market, we tried to go directly to the students, you know, because they're the ones that obviously, you know, are going to take control of their next professional steps. Yeah. It's really tough finding the ones that, number one, can afford to pay, number two, have the drive to want to engage with the products and the programs that we offer. So then it's about working with universities, but realistically, it's not with the whole university, it's with one individual that really buys into what you're doing, can really resonates with them. They can empathize with what you're trying to do. And then it's about fostering that relationship. And we also find that a lot of the stuff that we do is very bespoke for each individual faculty member, each individual course, because they obviously build it in their own kind of mindset, in their own kind of way. So makes it a bit difficult, but good fun.
It's giving you that trust, isn't it? So I guess if you're going to the end user, how do they know you are really good at what you do? How do you build credibility with them? How do you differentiate from anything else that they might spend their money on? Whereas if you're going through the university or the educational institute, they've already got their trust, they've already got their buy-in and the credibility, so they're effectively passing that through to you, and must make life so much easier.
Yeah. So yeah, it's good fun. Good fun.
Good. Apart from the man flu, sounds like you've had a great time and very, very productive. And I guess how do you measure the success of that? So how do you measure the success of that group? Is it commercially we've run a profitable program, we can now repeat that? Is it about driving audience? Like what are the metrics you're looking at there?
I think that the key thing for us is, number one, have the students developed? You know, has there been growth over that 9-month period? If they have, then that feeds back into the faculty member in terms of, well, that was a good experience. That's added value to the course. That then leads into, well, we can use that for promotion next year. So we want to work with that provider again. They want to work with us again because there's a value add to the program that they provide. What was interesting this year, we had the Dean of Business come across for them from the particular university that we work with, and again for him to see what it is that we do, to see if we can tie it into other programs. But the measure of success is very much kind of the outcomes for the individuals on the program, but also those for the faculty member that's got to build it into their programming to make their life easier as well. Which I think we ticked. It sounds like we did. The students will be getting their grades soon, so hopefully they're all happy with them. There's been development for everyone. And our partners there seem pretty happy as well. So fingers crossed
Nice.
that rolls on to another year. We've already started planning with this particular college for another iteration next year. There'll be more growth. There'll be more changes. This is one of the things as well that keeps them on board, keeps them interesting, keeps them engaged, is it's not static. It's not standing still. And I think that's something that we've really kind of built into all of our kind of business models, is the idea that we'll deliver something once, but never again. Marginal gains, always kind of improving. What's that 1% that we can improve on the next project and the next project and the next project? And the partners really like that because they see the evolution, they see that commitment, that the program doesn't get stale.
Love it. Well, I'm glad to hear it went well. So here's an interesting one. Something happened in my week that has never happened before in the history of the business. And it's a positive thing, but I'm interested in your take on how this thing starts out. So I went to Air's first wedding at the weekend. So two people who met
from the company.
Yeah. So they one no longer works with us, one does. But they met and started dating, and they moved in together when they were both colleagues at Air. I think he left 3 years ago. She's still with the business in a sort of middle management role, doing really well. And we went to their wedding. We went to their wedding at the weekend, and it was amazing, beautiful wedding, National History Museum, which is incredible. So, getting.
I saw your images.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. So absolutely positive experience. And what a lovely thing as a founder of a business to say, you know what, these two met as part of that journey. We've had lots of relationships formed off the back of Air, some that have lasted, some that haven't. And that's the first official wedding, as far as I know, anyway. It's the first wedding. So my question to you is, what's your opinion on people getting into relationships at work? Bit of a fun topic. As you grow a business, it's something that will happen. And it's one of those things that I got asked at the weekend. And I thought, you know what, this is one of those good news stories, right? It worked and it's fine. But I've heard
it could have been a bad news story.
Yeah, and we've seen that. We've seen that. So I just thought it was a nice topic to dig into, because it's one of those things that if you're going to run a business, actually, not that I'm saying that needs to be something you plan for, but it will happen. And I remember when it first happened in the office, I'm thinking, am I meant to be inputting on this? Is this something I should have an opinion on? Is this something I should be saying no to? Do I stay out of it? It's a really interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah, this is why we need HR experts to be able to decode this. It's like from our side, like number one, we haven't had, and then the generator's different because obviously they're people from different companies, different organizations. We haven't had a generator wedding. We've had generator relationships. I'm just trying to think if there's any at the moment. I don't think there is.
Past tense, is that?
Past tense. And even that, because they're not employees of ours, even that can be tricky sometimes. Because if you do get a rough relationship or things don't end well, then undoubtedly maybe one or maybe both of them are going to leave from our business perspective. That's not great. When it comes to your stuff, God, I don't know, because obviously what you have as well is you have the hierarchical element to it. It's not just dating. Is it dating in terms of which context? If you're a line manager and you're dating someone that you're managing, is that appropriate behavior from your senior leaders? And if it's not good for them, can you condone it across, the whole organization? I guess we've seen in the news recently things like wasn't it one of the female football clubs where there was an inappropriate relationship between, say, the manager and one of the players. And it opens a bit of a minefield because at the end of the day, you can't control what people do outside of the 9 to 5 or whatever it is, the Monday to Friday or Monday to Thursday. But it becomes, do you have a policy?
Well, do you know what? I can't answer that question, and I'm going to go out now and speak to our head of HR and ask her that question. I'm lucky enough to have a good one. So I'm not aware of a specific policy. It may well be covered within policies, but it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I've been asked the question several times in the office by people, because of course it is a thing and it has happened. And when you employ almost 100 people, and probably 3 times that in the history of the business, people are going to meet, and we've got a reasonably young workforce, because we've got people starting out in sales in their 20s, lots of people in their 20s who are, more likely to be looking for a relationship than perhaps you've got people in their 40s who are more likely to be married and have had kids and all that sort of stuff. So, it's an interesting question. And my personal view has always been, I don't think we have a right to play. I'm going to use the phrase that I don't necessarily mean. We don't have the right to play God, right? I can't dictate as a human being whether somebody should or shouldn't be in a relationship with other people. But there is a business risk there. I've got stories of people who have been in a relationship at work, and one has had to leave the business, whether that's through, let's say, redundancy or not doing their job at the right level, and they've lost their job, and it impacts on the other one. And some people have been able to, and this isn't just in air, this is previous roles as well, where I ran a business in Australia for 7-8 years, and similar sort of profile of business, and we had it there. And some people can deal with that, right? My partner has lost their job for whatever reason, but I can separate that, and that is something that I am happy to segment different parts of my life, and I'm able to do that. Other people, they didn't see eye to eye with the business's decision or whatever it might be, and that meant that they ended up leaving as well. And you actually create business risks that you don't anticipate by, I'm going to say, allowing it. I don't think you have the right to allow or disallow it, but by not encouraging it, but being okay with it. And I think it's one of those things that you can't control or try to control, but you have to be really careful with. To your point, if you've got two people in different hierarchical levels within the business, that's a risk, because then you're opening yourself up to exposure to that relationship doesn't go well. Have you then got like, if you've got then HR issues around they're not talking, but somebody needing to manage somebody or co-work with somebody on a project or whatever. There's so many things in there. Like you said, it's a complete minefield.
This would be a really interesting one to push out to anyone that's listening, that their views, because I think, as you said, it's you would want to keep it open. If people fall in love across airs, open plan, office area in the background, the box of heart-shaped chocolates or whatever on a Valentine's Day special, that you don't want to get in the way of that. But as a business, you've got to be able to control it to some extent. With slightly differently, we've had issues in the past as well. This is a while ago now. A lot of the majority of students that we bring in are all over 18. We don't work with minors. We don't work with anyone younger than 18, because it becomes very difficult in terms of how you navigate that, and it can be very complex. So we've always chosen to work with those that are 18 plus. And we had a coach that was delivering programs for us, an external. And one of our rules is, if you're going to hang out with the students after the workshops and everything else, we don't mind. But obviously, there is no relationships. You don't start dating any of the students, especially those that are on for a longer amount of time. Sometimes it's up to about a month, and you can create a relationship with those students over an extended period of time. And this one coach, we'd heard the next day, had basically been overstepping the mark after a couple of drinks, and spoke to him. And he's like, yeah, it's a bit of a grey area, is it? It's like, no. It's not a grey area at all. We said, do not fraternize or have relationships with any of the students in a romantic sense. What you've done has done. There's no grey area there. But it's tricky, isn't it? A lot of it comes down to the individual as well, and hoping, that they don't abuse their authority, or, that they go into things in the right way, or they're open about it. But, I guess with people, you just don't know. Here's
an interesting one. Imagine if those two people wanted the same promotion at the same time and applied for the same job. So they're at the same level.
I'm sure that's happened.
Well, that's what I mean. It's one thing to say they're in a relationship and one's a manager of whatever, but if you remove that by being in the same role, but you progress at different paces. There's a management role comes up. They're both ambitious. They both want to go for it. How do you deal with that situation? It's fascinating when you stop and think about all the possible scenarios. It really is. It could be quite good fun, actually.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out, even from the large organisations to smaller, because on a large organisation, How are you going
Most
to?
people
You
meet their
can't. You
spouses.
can't stop it. It's
Yeah, most people meet their partners at work in their,
yeah.
in their early career stage, and there are lots of stories of people going on and getting married and having kids. And I guess you're right, in a massive organization of 4,000 people, that must be happening weekly, monthly. I don't know,
Yeah.
but certainly as a regular part of course.
I'm sure there's certain industries where it goes on more than others as well. I could be wrong, but a friend of mine was cabin crew, and there's some interesting stories he used to tell me of cabin crew. It might be in all industries, but obviously when you're
none of them resulted in marriage, or all of them.
No, I think there's quite a lot. I think they're big, but that's also due to the hours that cabin crew do as well. I think it's really difficult. You've got the kind of it's kind of like shift work, isn't it? You're working evenings, you're away for periods of time. Yeah, it's pretty difficult. But yeah, I think there's a lot of relationships there. And I think maybe even in the teaching profession as well. I don't want to say the same things go on at teacher resorts or holidays.
Teacher resorts.
Who knows what they do in their inset days.
So let's move subject for a minute. I wanted to talk to you. I guess I just wanted to get a sense of. I'm getting asked a lot at the moment about market conditions, about just state of economy, particularly in the UK. I know you trade internationally as well. Just be keen to get your view on that. Obviously, it's different depending on where you sit, your industry, the industries you sell into. I think obviously with the update on inflation recently and interest rates have stayed the same and all that sort of stuff in the UK. And it's just been a topic of conversation probably in the last month more than maybe it was for a period of time. And I think people felt like it was lifting and maybe things have flattened a little bit again. I keep getting asked by people like, what's the market like? And obviously we're talking to so many people day in, day out through our customers, prospect base and client base that we see and hear a lot. I'd just love to get your take on where do you think the market is right now? Do you think it's lifting? Do you think the rest of 2024 we can have some business optimism, or is it gonna flatline or maybe even drop off a bit? And I know it's speculative, but just your angle would be appreciated.
I think more so from what we hear in the space, overall people are still really cautious. I think there was an e-commerce provider from the space that was at an event recently, and they're doing well. They're doing really well. But they were talking about the conversations that they were having at the conference was people are struggling. The majority of people in their industry are struggling. Market spends are down. People aren't really investing in anything new. And that's not just from like existing customers, that's also in the startup world, accessing that investment, accessing that finance. It's really tough at the moment. Organizations that are working in media, a lot of the partners are kind of reducing their spend. So I think there's still a lot of pessimism around the market at the moment. And that goes in the North American market as well with some of the partners that we have over there. It doesn't seem to be a lot of optimism. Obviously, there's huge geopolitical things that are going on at the moment. With what's going on in the UK, or we've got general election that's kind of not too far away. In the US, obviously, they're going through the same thing again, and I think there's also worry about the two candidates. And so I think people are just still feeling pretty negative about stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting. I think that's in line with what I'm hearing. I think everybody kind of wore last year as being a tricky year, difficult year, and maybe October, November in the autumn, it started to lift a little bit. And I think people went into Christmas with a bit of maybe there's some optimism. Q1 was, we started to see interest rates not rising anymore. We started to see inflation starting to look better, economy growing a little. And I just feel like the narrative in the last 6 weeks has been, maybe the wheels have fallen off a bit. Maybe it's slowed down a bit. Maybe it's not quite, we haven't quite got the optimism that it's going to lift as quickly. And we might be in this a bit longer than we thought. And I think certainly a general election here and the US is going to have a big impact. And obviously no sign of an end to war in Ukraine and in Israel and Gaza and all that kind of stuff. So I think from an economic standpoint, it's just interesting to understand that. I think that, like always, there'll be companies doing exceptionally well and companies tanking. They've got nothing to do with the economy just because they're poorly run. But the stuff in the middle, that's operationally reasonably efficient and, you know, does well as a general rule, I think is definitely not seeing that lift that we all had hoped might be there. And
I think we're still seeing those sway, the redundancies. You know, I think it's still got people, you know, shedding workforce, and I think that just adds another sense of kind of pessimism, and it's really difficult at the moment. You know, I think hopefully, you know, again, it's since COVID and then the cost of living and the energy crisis and everything that we're going through. If we can get through the next kind of 6 months, get to the end of the year, then hopefully, you know, we're starting to feel a bit more stable again. But it was always going to be a bit of a marathon, wasn't it? After COVID and the cost of living and the energy cost and everything else, I don't think I'm massively surprised.
No, agreed. Hey, on that, you've mentioned something. I could turn this into the HR episode for some reason. Redundancies. Have you ever made anyone redundant? Ever had to make people redundant?
Yeah.
So someone's listening to this, they've never had to do it, but they're running their own business or they're thinking of starting their own business. What does that feel like? What does that look like? Tell us about your experience of making people redundant.
It's awful. Yeah. Worst thing in the world. Well, not the worst thing in the world, but it's a pretty bad thing. You know, like you never recruit someone wanting to make them redundant. You do everything that you possibly can to detriment to yourself. You know, I've not taken salaries before to keep hold of staff to try and get things through. And I think even for the business, damaging it, you know, is actually what would be better for all involved is to make decisions far quicker and to go through that process. I think it's always been okay from our side. We haven't had anyone that has not been upset, but we've always been super transparent in how the business is doing, what's going on with the business. And I think it's kind of giving people plenty of forewarning in terms of where we are and the reasons behind the redundancies. But it's awful. It's terrible. You never want to make anyone redundant.
No, it's interesting, isn't it? Because actually it's a normal part of running a business, right? When you stop and think about it, we as whether you are an FD, a CFO, a CEO, a founder, a managing director, whatever it is, whatever the shape or size of your business, there are people within it who have a responsibility to run an effective, profitable, healthy business, because that's for the good of everybody. It's not just for the shareholders' pockets. Sometimes it may well be, but on the most part, people don't do it for shareholders' pockets. They do it because they feel they have to in order to run a healthy business. And if you've got a healthy business that's got money in the bank for a rainy day, that's got, you know, the ability to have a poor month or two and keep going, and enough cash out there to do that, that's continually delivering a profit that allows the company to reinvest into the next phase of growth, that's the kind of organization you want to be a part of. If we then, because of an emotional feeling for somebody or a group of people, don't make the right decisions to keep that health of that business at the right level, then we're fairly irresponsibly playing with things. And my view on things is always about, you know, sometimes it's the sacrifice of few for the many, right? So if you've got, you know, in our case, we're nearly 100 people. If I've got to sacrifice 5 people for the sake of 95 people, then I'd say that's a pretty good decision. No, we're not in that position, but I have been. We had a period of time last year when we did a bit of restructuring and went through a round of redundancies, and it was horrible when I stop and think about the emotional piece. But on the most part, those people have gone on to pass as new and done really well. On the most part, the business has gone, yeah, you know what, we miss those people, but actually their roles are covered from an efficiency perspective. We've got people, we've got better, you know, we've got more out of people, and not necessarily working harder, but actually they're working smarter, they're doing better things. We're not a spread thing, and the P&L and the balance sheet is healthier as a result of it. I can't see a criteria under which that was a bad decision, other than maybe vanity, which isn't a criteria to be working on. We haven't got as many people, or wasn't it horrible to let that person go? And you're absolutely right, it was. But you know what? They live another day and they fight another day and they go and get another role and they get paid, and so does the business. And that's the key bit. But yeah, my God, it's hard. And I'll never forget the March 16th and 17th, 2020, where I think we made about 20 redundancies in the space of 2 days, as 85% of our revenue dropped off a cliff because of COVID. Yes, we recovered, but my God, those 2 days of conversations with Sam, my head of HR, by my side, obviously over the phone in those days, was pretty darn emotionally brutal.
Yeah, I remember in the space on that day. So in the generator, and there are a couple of organizations and using rooms, just letting people go. Just this kind of stream of people, and people that I've not seen show emotion. You tend to think they're quite hard nosed in terms of running their businesses. Leaving the day in tears. Because that impact that it had, and obviously there was a lot going on at that time as well. But it's at the end of the day, you have to make a decision that keeps the business, because ultimately that's going to impact the lives of many, many more, hopefully over the years, the decades that come with that. It's like, I think, I'm sure you do this, and I know you do this. No one is the transparency component. I've worked with heard from a lot of colleagues, a lot of friends about their redundancy process being really, really negative, because they didn't know where they stood. They didn't really understand a lot about it. They got up one day and, there they go, they're having a conversation with their line manager to be made redundant, and that's it. And you walk away with a really sour kind of taste in your mouth. And I think that the other thing that most companies don't do is they're not planning for redundancies. They're not planning with their workforce to enable them to survive after that. You've got swathes of these people being made redundant that never expected redundancy. Maybe they'd expected a job for life to some extent, or it would be up to them when they made the decision. And then they got nowhere to go. Pack your stuff, off you go. Whereas companies, I think they owe it to their staff right from the beginning. Say, look, we're building your career plan with you. Whether you stay with us on or not, we're going to ensure that the time that you come to leave, you're going to be in a better position than you are now. Really invest in that. And we're starting to see more progressive organizations work in this way. But it just makes that redundancy far easier, that, okay, we've made sure you're the best person that you can be, and you have the skills, the knowledge, the network, whatever it is that you need to now take that next step in your career. Because unfortunately, it can't be with us because of the situation that we're currently in. But you should feel comfortable now in being able to take those next steps. But I would say for 90% of the people that I speak to that get made redundant, it is literally a, wow.
Didn't see that.
Didn't see that coming. I got to start from, I have to do my CV that I haven't done in 15 years. I have to start, where do I start looking? Do I get the Guardian newspaper? Is that, or the Times job ads, or, oh, Indeed, what the hell is it? So, I think it's also the responsibility of not just the organizations, but also the individual. I get a little bit frustrated with the individual as well. It's like, oh, I've just been made redundant. Okay. Happens. Oh yeah, but I didn't expect it. It's like, well, you should have been expecting it. You should have been preparing for this day. We all save for a rainy day for our house, don't we? When the eventuality of a redundancy happens, you should be kind of prepared. We prepare for our fridge or our washing machine breaking down, and we're saving our money. Should be doing the same with our careers.
Interesting. But you know what? I've never thought about it like that. I think it's a really valid point. Is that you can only control so much. Things happen, right? Nobody's got through a career without shit happening, right? Because it does. And the reality is you can't live life to the wire all the time. You've got to have a rainy day fund. You've got to have a rainy day plan, whether that be career, like you say, the washing machine going, the fridge going, whatever. You've got to have something to fall back on. And I think it's a really good and valid point. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to get your thoughts on, see, we're keen to maybe get some people on as guests to join us for a conversation, but also, I guess, welcome engagement from our audience as we build this out. My thoughts are, I'd love people to email in questions, let us know if there's topics that they'd like us to discuss, or they've got questions they'd like me to put to Neil, or they'd like to ask me or any of our guests as we move through this. But also we'd love to have guests that have got unique experiences in running and growing a business. And just love to get your thoughts around. So anyone in terms of profile you'd love to have on here as a guest, and then we'll encourage people to write in and let us know if they want to join.
I think there's a range of things that I'd love to understand. One is the kind of new breed of business owner. Not that you're not young, Owen. You're far younger than I. But that kind of early 20s, that new generation of business owner that's coming in, and how they're approaching it. Is there a different stance in terms of how they look at employment, or how they look at marketing, or how they look at just creating that organization? I think that'd be really interesting. And I think also those in really diverse industries that I have no idea about. I think at the generator, we get some of it, so I'm able to plug into some elements. But for that larger organization, you know, the ones that maybe have their own entities, their own space, they're national organizations, they're multinational, you know, learning about that kind of side of things as well, I think, you know, maybe would be super interesting. And anyone that's doing something differently, you know, there was, I'll find the name of it, Murray from Avalon Planning in the space was telling me about this podcast another podcast that had been launched, which was trying to help people understand different careers, different industries, different sectors. I know they're out and about in Exeter. It'd be good to kind of get them on and maybe, you know, looking to do something there. Because I think, you know, just different ways of working, different ways of marketing, different ways of sales, all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, look, get in touch with us if you'd like to join us on the show. We'd love to get some guests involved, and really, like Neil said, really interested to hear some stories and some. I love hearing war stories, the things that people have had to get through to get to where they are, and whether that's a failure story. So I've got somebody I'd love to get on that's actually built a business, grown it, and lost it because they didn't make the right decisions, and hoping to get him on. I've also got somebody who's managed to grow from 0 to 60, 70 million in annual recurring revenue in the last 7 years that I'm hoping to get on as well. And it's that kind of story. You just think, you know what, both of those stories can be learned from. Not one more than the other, but we can absolutely get people learning from those things. And as I said earlier, if you've got questions, you've got topics, write in, let us know, and we'll absolutely do our best to cover those off. Neil, thank you for another fantastic conversation. What have you got planned? What's the big event over the next week, other than don't mention Spurs? What have you got?
I'm going to a 50th, not wedding anniversary, birthday. So a friend from the Alps, and it's maybe it is the right weather. We've all got to dress up in ski gear, which kind of getting towards the summer isn't ideal in a sweaty pair of salopettes. But it's not that warm. So that's the weekend plan. And then not much. We got a lot going on. We're trying to.
No more travel. You staying in the UK?
I'm off to Barcelona. No, I'm off to Barcelona in a couple of weeks. Okay. We're going. You and I, mate. We're going to the demo night tomorrow.
Oh yeah. There you go.
Sure it's in your
demo night at the Generator Key.
No, it's at the Innovation in the centre of town.
Well, there you go.
By the university.
Okay,
don't go down there. I won't be there.
Love it. Well, I'll see you there.
Thanks for having me, buddy. Much appreciated.